My gosh, you guys have to listen to me for far too long. Now let's talk about creating your test plan, software quality assurance. We'll actually have a future lecture at some point going through SQA in more detail. This is your deliverable for Saturday night, midnight. Here's your test plan. What is SQA? And okay, my first hobby horse. SQA is not just testing. You will be in organizations where their whole attitude of SQA is testing. It is a far more comprehensive and far more involved aspect that basically helps you to build the right thing and to make sure it works. It is, and actually right now, and that I have a son-in-law who works in SQA. It's the redheaded stepchild of IT. I mean, it's just seen as second class. It's not paid as well. It's not given the resources, and I can't tell you how incomprehensibly stupid it is. I analyze these failed projects. Guess what one of the major factors almost always is in a failed IT project? Poor SQA. If they'd done proper SQA, they actually would have known where they were at. They would have had a better sense of whether or not they were on some sort of path to completion. And as I note here, SQA applies not just to source code, but to all the deliverables. In other words, you need to be applying the same principles. You don't test an org chart per se, but you want to evaluate it. As I did your org charts. You want to say, how good is this? You want to revise it as you can. Comment from a white paper I did on SQA back 20 years ago. It's not a separate activity done by a separate organization. I'm a firm believer in having a separate testing organization, but SQA has to be an integral part of the entire project lifecycle by all people. What you come up with is, not there yet, sorry. Getting ahead of myself on slides. What are the core values? Reliability, bugs. Performance, speed. Functionality. Those first three are roughly in that order. You don't want bugs, and you don't want it to take too long, and you want it to have as many features as possible. Generally speaking, reliability is more important than performance, and performance is more important than functionality. But in all three of those aspects, it has to be sufficient or people will reject it. Let's take a spreadsheet. How many of you would use a spreadsheet that gave wrong answers in calculation formulas? Okay, that's sort of, and yet under certain circumstances, Microsoft Excel will. But no, that's sort of like, it's got to give me the right answer to this. Spreadsheet. I change value over here, and it takes 30 seconds for the updated value to appear in a cell. Again, after a certain point, poor performance becomes intolerable. Functionality. I can add or subtract, but I can't multiply or divide my formulas. That's sort of the basis there. Now, once you get beyond those, you have issues of compatibility. How well does it interact with other systems it has to deal with? Lifespan. How long is this going to be around? If it's a competitive product, it's like how soon are competitors going to knock it out of the market? Is it based, if I'm delivering you this world-class accounting system, but it has to run on Windows XP, I'm probably going to not get a lot of takers except from the millions of companies worldwide that are still running Windows XP. Do any of you ever sit and watch when you're like at a restaurant or a doctor's office and you see a floating screen? It's like, look what they're still using. There's a lot of Windows XP out there still. Deployment, you actually have to be able to deliver deployment. You have to be able to support it over time, and you have to have costs. So these are the core values. Now, we're going to have a whole lecture about this diagram, so don't worry about this too much right now. The point of this, the essence of the whole software lifecycle is you take an existing deliverable, if there is one, or a template if there isn't. You do your process activity, and you have a brand new or modified deliverable. So if I'm creating an org chart, I create an org chart. If I'm creating code, if there is no code, I'm creating a new code file, and I'm I've got a new code file. If I'm modifying existing code, I take it, code, and have new code. Your deliverables go through metrics as they are appropriate and useful, human reviews, and testing, all of which go to an evaluation, which is to say, we like this, we don't like this, here's what remains to be done. If there are defects, you file them under defect management. If in this process you've learned about things that aren't working well as far as development, you say we're going to improve our deliverables or our process. Whatever you create is checked into a configuration management system for eventual release. And when you go to modify it again, it comes around and becomes the existing deliverable. Now within all this, your company has key values that it cares about. Some of these are the qualities we talked about previously. Some of them can be things like, if you're doing a game has to be fun. Some game design companies don't realize that. If you're doing a spreadsheet, it's got to give accurate results. No one wants a spreadsheet that's going to give inaccurate numbers. Guidelines and standards are basically saying, this is how you will do X. If it's code, here are coding guidelines and standards. If it's a document, here are the document guidelines and standards. You find a lot of companies will have templates for all their various document deliverables. You need to grab one and start to fill it in and create what you need. Whatever methodology you do is going to determine both the existing and the new deliverables and the process. And this is a cycle that literally everyone who's working on the software project is involved with, and it's going on all the time. Your test plans do not have to address this. I just thought I'd tell you that right now. Key aspects of SQA altogether, and this gets back to the chart. The methodology, okay, I already talked about that. Slide will be out there. Oops. Okay, now let's talk about testing, because for your test plan, again, we're halfway through the semester. If you're doing real midterms, you'd be looking at midterms probably next week. Fortunately, you have until November. In fact, I slipped it. I don't know how many of you saw that I slipped the midterm a week from what was originally planned, so that we can get all the way through Facts and Fallacies of Software Engineering by Robert Glass before the midterm. So the midterm is currently like the 16th of November or something. It's really your final, quite frankly, folks. To be honest, if I slipped it 2 more weeks, that'd be cruel to do that after Thanksgiving. Okay, types of testing. And I'm pretty sure there's one or more podcasts that we're going to talk about testing. Unit class testing on the smallest level. Basically, you have a set of testing that goes through higher and higher levels of complexity. So testing your smallest units, testing groups of related units or modules together, testing things that interact with each other, system or end-to-end testing, trying it out in a real-world environment. Performance stress testing. Boy, you would be surprised how many large corporations fail to do adequate performance and stress testing. Yeah, well, there you go. It's like, oh yeah, L scale's fun. We have some servers will fail over too. And I have reviewed a number of projects, particularly in litigation, that got to this point and just ground to a halt. When it springs to mind, Sirius XM, satellite radio, back before they merged with, or Sirius Satellite, before they merged with XM, had hired some company to basically run their IT, their subscription department. And this was supposed to be where people could sign up and manage all the customer records and so on. And it was supposed to have a 2-hour window each night to process all new subscriptions and update data and so on. It was so poorly designed that it was taking more than 24 hours to process the stuff from a 24-hour period. And yeah. So Sirius was going to end the contract, and the company filed for bankruptcy to keep Sirius from ending the contract, and I testified on behalf of Sirius and said, no, this would never have worked. User acceptance, usability testing. Do the users actually understand? You'd be surprised how many people fail at that. And regression testing. Oh, this is so important. This should be an integral part all through development. Come up with a set of regression tests so that as changes, as someone mentioned earlier, Matthew Dagan, someone mentioned that when you change code, including fixing bugs, you have a certain percentage chance of introducing new bugs or reawakening old ones. And regression testing is, okay, we've checked in our changes, we have a regression test suite that we're going to run through and make sure that we have not reawakened old bugs or introduced ones that we don't have. So your test plan, again, go out to the, if you want templates, go out to the Winter 2017 wiki. Feel free to shamelessly, grab one, remove the text, fill it out yourself. But you want to tie it into requirements and design. As someone said earlier today, somewhere I think in this half of the room, your test plan should help you see how far done you are if you're actually implementing the things that you said you're implementing. You should be checking for reliability. Your test plan should check for reliability, performance, and functionality. Here's the level of defects that we are willing to accept in terms of number and severity. Here's the performance. This is how fast it has to respond. Here's the functionality, our minimum viable product. Your test plan should indicate what tests are being done, what they're being done for, or repeated. And you want some form of user acceptance testing. So that's what I'm looking for in your test plan. A true professional test plan would take you about a semester to write, quite frankly. So this is something you've got a week to write. Get one of the templates. Build on what you've done so far. In fact, doing the test plan may actually, for those of you who are going back to revamp your architecture design, may help you to go back and revamp your architecture design. Look at your requirements document, look at your architecture design document, and say, how am I going to test for this stuff? And again, if it's not as detailed as you would like it, by Saturday, once again, you'll have a chance to resubmit within 2 weeks. Any questions on the test plan? Everyone's sort of reached that burned out stage. Yes?
How do we know what to put for performance, I guess? 'Cause at the point that we haven't really implemented it.
What I'd probably do for performance is I would do something like, well, let's take each of the products. The audience, thank you. Before I say users, the audience engagement one. What's the maximum acceptable delay between the time that I click my answer to a question and I get a response back saying this has been logged? For blockchain, for moi. And in some cases that's less critical, but it's like, at what point when I'm trying to recognize the face do I decide there's a real problem here and I'm going to ask the person to restart it? Yeah. Is that going to be 5 seconds, 10, 15? Part of that's going to depend on the API and the Apple, but sort of stuff like that. On the side scroller, there you've got some real performance issues because you don't want a lag time as you're trying to maneuver around traps and so on. So it's kind of like, okay, we expect this level of performance, we expect this level of smoothness and how it moves. I don't know, is this touch control on your side scroller? What's your platform? I'm trying to remember.
Desktop.
Oh, desktop. Okay. So you've got mouse, and it's I don't know if you're tracking the mouse, if you're using WSAD. Okay. So it's kind of like how smooth is the response time? What can we do? So on and so forth. So if and in some cases it won't be an issue, but just no, we expect this level of responsiveness. And again, if you're using an engine, then there's a good chance you're not going to worry about that because the engine is going to actually achieve that. I don't think the side scroller is going to overload the engine. But, you know, it's could. Very complex side scroller. So, midnight by Saturday, submit your team's test plan documentation, resubmit your PERT and Gantt charts if desired. I did, by the way, go back and correct the scores on all the requirements documents that I thought were 2 points, and there actually were 3 points. So I had a number of you come up and say, why did we get just 2 points on ours? Because I'm an idiot. I have to actually look to see what scores I did for these. Putting in the next 7 billable hours by start of next period. Part 4 in peopleware. Webster 5 readings, which are what? And watch a podcast, of course. Let's see. That's 5. Talk about thermal client of truth. Oh, an runaway IT project. That's a fun one too. Do not defer the difficult. Those are all 3 quick reads. Those are all maybe 6 paragraphs long. So we've got all that. So that's your assignment for the week. And of course, keep working on your programs. And that's it. I'll be here if you have any questions. But other than that, the rest of the time is yours if you want it. Or you can all run off screaming into the afternoon.